Welcome to the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. In this podcast, we cover all topics on how to grow your B2B SaaS, no matter in which stage you're in. I'm Joran Hofman, the host of the show and the founder of Redditus, which is a B2B SaaS that helps other B2B SaaS companies to set up, manage, and grow an affiliate program. Being a founder myself means I'm going through the exact same journey as you are, experiencing the exact same issues, and probably have the exact same questions. And this is why I started the podcast in the first place. Get advice from industry experts on how to grow my B2B SaaS. So if you like this content, make sure to subscribe, follow, give it a thumbs up. Let's just dive in. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the unsexy truth about startup success. My guest is Cristobal Alonso. Cristobal is mostly known for his role as the CEO of StartupwiseGuys, but next to this, he also wrote a book called Perform, The Unsexy Truth About Startup Success. He's writing the sequel right now, Perform in Times of Crisis. He's also writing a third book called The Dark Side of Startups, explaining more about the VC world. He's an early stage investor, did over 400 investments via StartupwiseGuys, filled roles like COO, CEO, Chairman, Chief Transformation Officer, and has been a founder himself. And on a personal note, he has been a professional basketball player. Welcome to the show, Cristobal.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. If people are not convinced after this introduction, we're going to start off with a Dutch blunt question. Why should people listen to you today?
Well, getting older, which in these days we call it being wiser. And I think the fact that I've been around almost 1,000 founders' journeys, apart from my own journey, I think make it worth it for anybody wanted to go through this. It's a life to be scared of, but a life to aspire to. And I think also from an investor point of view, the fact that doing 400 investments means we probably review about 12,000, 14,000 startups in the last few years. It's probably also interesting to say you want to get there, how these people do it in that type of volume.
And today we're going to talk about the unsexy truth about startup success. So we're going to go towards success, right? How do we even define success? What is success for you?
For me, it's actually funny part because for me, it's freedom. It's actually to choose to do what you want to do. But in a startup, that means to keep the startup running and chasing growth. Right? That's the startup life. Right? The startup is all about growth. If you don't want growth, you want something else, you need to build another type of company. So in a startup, it's basically keep having the means, being funding or being revenues, cash at the end of the day, to keep chasing growth and becoming a dominant player in whatever market or field you choose to. Right? I think that is, at the end of the day, success in the startup life, right? And I think the one thing that makes clear, we just talk about a decade in that small sentence, right? Because success in a startup in a bigger level, both impact and growth only happens really over a decade. It's not something that happens fast, almost by any means.
No, indeed, it will take time. I think that's what we're going to dive in today as well. And regarding your book, right, it's called Perform, The Unsexy Truth About Startup Success, and Perform is in capitals. So you basically already indicate that there's something behind it. What does Perform stand for?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we divided the book in each letter means something. P for purpose and values, E for effective planning, so on. And basically 7 areas, 7 aspects of a startup life that if done right, we can increase the chances of success. But all of them, there is nothing there about pitching, about fancy things. It's just about from as much as mental toughness and energy to eating well to basically define the culture, values of the company, the capacity to plan properly. Again, that's the unsexy side, right? So people go in thinking this is all going to be about pitching on the stage, being in TV, running into airports, etc. And I think when things are done constantly and effectively, as any other company, I think the chances of success are incremental, if not exponential. And that's what we try to spread in the book.
Yeah. So even to maybe tell the full 7, I think there's 7, right? There's 7. Yeah. Purpose and values, effective planning, roles and responsibilities, optimal energy, robust communication, and mental toughness.
Correct.
And like you just mentioned it, you spoke to or you work with 1,000 founders. What is the most common mistake companies make while building a startup?
I would say there is different elements, but I would say if I had to choose one, is hiring. Is hiring broadly, right? And that has many dimensions, right? So, for example, just to touch maybe 2 or 3 quickly. One is the whole idea of purpose and values, right? It's hiring without having defined the values of the company, the type of company you want to create, right? So it's basically hiring based on skills, right? And not thinking about what kind of people I want to be working with or what kind of company I want these people to be landing in, right? So I think the hiring, the short-term mentality of hiring and the skill base is actually fundamental. And everything that has to do about HR management. I was yesterday with a founder, and this was his key question. Hey, I'm 27, my co-founder is 50. I need to make 2 hirings with my first round. That's it. And if I get them wrong, it's game over most likely, right? And he has never hired, right? And we spent 20, 25 minutes just talking about simple things. But I think it's the lack of understanding. And I think the fact that we have gone into a Zoom world in which you don't even have, in many cases, physical contact with these people before you hire makes it even more difficult in the process, right? Because I remember one of the things was telling you, go for a walk, go for 1 hour walk with the person and just talk about life, right? Because I think, again, we focus too much on the technical aspects of hiring in not understanding the people within the people that we are hiring. And I think that's the fundamental in a startup with the level of intensity, with the level of stress or pressure. I think people, especially the first 2-3 years, is all that matters. Everything else, if you get the right people, everything else will work. If you get the wrong people, everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, and this is probably why you have the purpose and values at the top of before, right? So that has to be in place, and then based on that, you can hire the right people. Because if things happen, stressful situations are gonna happen, right? Then you know that you have the right people, and then you might have somebody who's less skilled, but at least he's there.
Correct. And just when we are now writing Performing Times of Crisis, one of the chapters is how does a resilient culture helps you go through these times, right? So how, if you have treated the people right, you have just the right people, when the bad moment comes and people have sometimes you're not able to pay salaries for a number of months, etc., people is there for you. People is there backing you and say, hey, we are going to do it together. We're going to go through it. They're not walking out the door, right? So I think it's fundamental to do it from the beginning. But it's what you, if you build it upon, when the tough times will always come in one stage or another. That culture is what is going to keep the people united and fighting together. And being a CEO is quite lonely. You have a team that believes into what the company is doing, not just believing in you, but in what the company is doing. I think it is one of the best or easiest ways within its difficulty to surpass a crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think we can say perform is like almost a process or a methodology. Like, how would you go about implementing it into a startup?
Yeah, I think there is 2 ways because the way the book is written is you can take any of the chapters on its own, right? So sometimes yesterday, we are terrible at planning. Let's start there, right? So it's actually thought through. You have a problem and you want to go through it, and you want to see some good examples, some potential exercises you can do to get there. Just go to the chapter that you need, right? I will say that if not, the order makes some sense in a way. But to me, is that we even have at the back of the book and kind of a wheel exercise in which say, can you measure your company, right? And the way you will actually measure your company might tell you, hey, let's start in these 2 areas, right? So it might be planning and communication, right? So there is a way to actually measure where the company is at and where the focus can be. You can be working on all of them. I don't think you can really focus on all of them at the same time. I think there is certain process, but I don't think there is an order. I will say, as you well mentioned before, that if you have not started working on your purpose and values, you need to start from there. That for sure. But if you have, maybe you have to look at other areas, right? So, but the book is written in a way that is practical. There is always about 6, 7, 8 startups cases there. So you realize this is not guys in the US. This is anybody in your garage in Europe that can be your neighbor. So it can be you. I think that was a very important factor that we wanted to put in the book. And secondly, that you can take one chapter at a time in the area that you feel most needed for the company, or you need to refresh yourself, or you want a different point of view.
I think one question I wanted to ask, like you mentioned now already, it's indeed like European examples. I guess if you just like, why should we not look at the US examples? What is the difference between the US examples we keep seeing a lot of the times versus what we do here in Europe?
I think we're different. I think the markets are different. The capital allocation is different. The mentality is different. I tend to think I admire many things in the US and in the startup space. But I think the whole idea of building on people and caring about people is very different in Europe. Right? I remember when COVID started, I was in a VC panel, and the advice from the two American guys was fire everyone, save cash and start. Right? Like no contemplation. I think the Europeans were different. I think we care about the people way more. I think we bring the people in the journey, call it socialism, whatever you want. But I think there is that element of care, and I think that's different. I think the way we look at people is different. And I think the way we get satisfaction through our relationships with people is very different, right? Because it's just business, mafia, talking in the movies. I don't think so. I think we spend 1/3 of our life, at least usually, with these people. So I want to enjoy that 1/3 of my life, right? And I think it's all about the people you're working with. And we mentioned before, this is a 10-year process, right? So you're going to spend a lot of time with these people in your life. Right? So I think that's a fundamental change. I think it's also the European market. It requires traction, revenues, proofs, way more than the American. At the same time, maybe it's a bit more patient about things don't need to happen tomorrow. The Americans are having 6 months, quit almost in a way. I think the patience, the resilience in the market is different, and especially in Eastern Europe, which is what we have been investing 50% of, even more at the beginning. The resilience level is much, much bigger, and I think that has to be taken into consideration. Right? But I think that the American thing was about, apart from the samples might be different, was also about when you see somebody in the US, it's very far away. And there is always mental excuses why you cannot beat that person, right? When you see somebody that is your neighbor, there is no mental excuses. It's just choose not to do it, right? I think that was part of the idea, right? So it was, hey, I got a guy from Estonia, a guy from Lithuania, a guy from Denmark, a guy from Spain, from Italy, from the Balkans. Anybody can do this. This is not about superheroes. This is about persuasiveness, mentality, and desire to do it.
Yeah, because in the end, it's a lot more relatable if it's somebody really close to you instead of on the other side of the world, of course. And I do agree. I think employees want more than just money, right? I'm not saying that the US employees want purely money, but people want to have a purpose. They want to actually know what they're going for. And also, it's not easy, especially here in the Netherlands, to lay off people. Like you have a lot of rules, where in the US, it's often in some states, it's a lot easier. Like here, you can't just fire, but there has to be legitimate reasons and a lot of good reasons to actually fire people in bulk. So I think that's also maybe a big difference, like the legislation around that. And you mentioned you have a lot of examples from founders, right? A lot of examples from EU founders. What do they have in common? Is there any takeaway we can take out of what do these people have in common? Like, why are they doing well?
I will take more you allow me the Central Eastern European, which is what we have, I would say, the core there. And I think one of the key examples of key commonalities is the lack of role models, right? Because in a way, the economies have been working the way they work right now for max 30 years or 33 years now. And the startup world is something, has at the most a decade, right? So I think the lack of role models within the families, within the close circles, is something that we sense, and is why I think the best ecosystems have been those in which there has been a very strong mentality to give back. So people that even after 5 years are there, mentoring, even putting in small tickets. I have seen so many founders also themselves investing. But again, it's not just about money; it's about the time, putting their experience out there. So the ecosystem is doing really well. I have seen this mentality of give back very early on, and I think in a way it's also the openness of people to talk. So I wouldn't say that Europeans are known for talking about failure. Let's not say that, because it's not the truth, and it's something that we are learning. But I think people is more and more open to talk about their personal experience, right? To tell it as it is. You were mentioning about the Dutch and being direct. So I think we are in Eastern Europe. We have that similar thing. Right? People is quite direct. It's quite straightforward. I call it. I don't want poetry here, right? Poetry is for something else. It's not for this world, right? For this world, the startup, right? I love poetry. I love playing music, but it's my relaxation side, right? So I think this tell it as it is. Don't BS. I think it's a very important why we can actually be very different, but also very united in the way we actually operate. And it might even be because people don't speak great English. In a way, they are very simple explaining their problems, that they don't put flashy things around it, because we always speak I almost speak 100% of our time in a second language, right? And that makes an interesting world, I think, in which we operate in the startups in Europe, right? Which is, I think, very different in the US, which everybody's speaking in their own language in a way. So I think that also changes the communication, but I make it a bit, in my opinion, more sincere, more direct, more straightforward. So I think that's quite common in good founders, at least, and founders who say that I'm the path to success.
Yeah, I love it. So it's funny, or quite funny. It's interesting that they give back early on their openness to talk, their sharing their personal experience and telling it how it is. Like I like the English approach indeed. Like we don't use a lot of fancy words, or at least I don't. I really just try to keep it as simple as possible and as straightforward as possible. And it could be with the English that we don't know all these words, I guess, that we can't hide in them either. So we just tell it how it is. I've never thought about it like that.
I had one of our companies in portfolio sent a note that they were shutting down and said, dude, how can it be that until last month the reports were fantastic, amazing, everything is on track, and next month you said, and that was an American founder. Oh, you were not reading between the lines. You were saying here and there. Said, no, I can't read you the sentences. There is no reading between the lines. This is what it says. And it was interesting. That was an American founder, right? So I do think that the whole thing there is about tell it as it is and don't put too many whistles, bells and whistles, actually is probably one of the reasons there, right? The English part of it.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Reditus. Reditus helps B2B SaaS companies to set up, manage, and grow an affiliate program. In short, it means you're asking other people, affiliates, to promote your SaaS. You would only pay the affiliates a kickback fee when they deliver you paid clients, making it a very cost-effective and scalable way to grow your MRR. See more at getreditus.com. And if we go back to the framework or the process, if people want to start implementing Perform, and again, like you can probably start with P and then you can take out any chapter you want. Is there going to be any challenges you think they're going to face, and then any ideas on already how to overcome those?
Yeah, I think you cannot think that you're going to go to a book and having a cooking recipe right here. I think what the book tells you is many things you need to try, and you need to find what works for you. Right? In a way, I would almost say it's a methodology of what to try until you find your own answer. Right? Not any. You want to talk about leaders and communication style. It gives 4 different areas and 4 different balance. Right? You need, as a leader, to find your own balance. There is people who writes better than speaks, but you cannot just live in one of the two as a leader. Right? You need to complement those. That's an example. So I think the book is basically about giving opportunities or giving things to try in an organized manner, which, by the way, in a way, to me, that resembles the accelerator a lot. Right? The accelerator is not going to give you the answer. It might tell you what not to do in certain cases, but it's going to give you a very organized manner of how to go through the steps as fast as possible, as cheaply as possible, while testing. You find the answer, next. You find the answer, next. You don't find the answer, you need to keep going, you need to go on. And I think that's in a book is that way, right? So there is certain things you have to do, but most of them is how to do it with a process that saves you time and money while finding the answer, your own answer in your own company, because every company is different and every leader is different. Right?
Yeah, you have to give your own twist to it. Like even, I guess you took the cooking example. I had to think about HelloFresh. They give you the ingredients, they give you the exact steps. That's not what this is, right? It's giving you the ingredients and almost like the end goal. And because your company, your cooking style is different, you need to come to the end conclusion yourself.
And that's what happens with recipes. The best recipes are when you take an idea and then you make it your own way. You make it with what is fresh in your kitchen. What do you feel today? What are you good at? And then you come up with your own touches and your own ways to do the things. And sometimes with your terrible recipe, that you need to do it again because you fail. I say, I started in the right place. I added the wrong ingredients. Have to time again until you get it right.
Yeah. And I think the timing of the ingredients, the timing of what you do is going to be important as well. You invested in a lot of startups, right? What criteria do you typically use when selecting like early stage startups to invest in?
Mm-hmm. We do about 100 investments per year, right? So we do invest a lot. People might think that's, we just get into a room and make a decision. But I think there is still a very thorough process, which before they even get to the GPs, they There is 3 or 4 people involved. They're looking at technology, they're looking to the agents, they're looking at the founders. But they get to us, to the general partners, let's say, right? And I think we're looking mostly in early stage to the teams. And we say, yeah, I really talk about teams, people. And yes, that's all it matters. When you have 5,000, 7,000 euros MRR, like the product might be completely different 2 years from now, and nobody cares. What we care about is this team capable to do that. Right? So I think my biggest focus is on the team. So I try not to focus just on the CEO. I try to understand everybody else. We try to get everyone in the conversation. We try to have difficult questions, and I want to see how the different people in the team reacts. This is a team that only the CEO talks, right? And you can see it. Oof. Or I like to try to test through not easy questions in a way the team cohesiveness and decision making, the roles and responsibilities within the team. The second one is I like to test is the ambition of the team. So is there an ambition to make something really big, and is it fundamental on something, right? So have they built a mental map of how they're going to get there? And we know it's BS. It's like Excel can support everything, but you need to have a map, right? I want to be a unicorn. How are you going to do that? And it is fascinating how most people cannot think 100x. I think even a lot have a 10x problem, right? They're here and how are you going to be 10 times bigger? How are you going to be 100 times bigger? And you're like, they don't know it, right? So to me, that's a signal, right? Some teams is there. And the third one is the purpose, right? I would really want to explore in those calls. Is there an inner why that to do this, right? So it's just not the money, it's just not the ego, it's not just the dream. It's really something powerful there, right? So we do that one. I think those 3 things are things. Of course, we understand the product. Is there any differentiation? Is there a market? But it's just too early, right? And I also think my team has done most of that work. And most of those things we can coach. I cannot coach a bad team to become a good team. But I can coach a good team to do things much better. Or we can coach them, right? So I think that's really spend time on the team is the fundamental part of our job, I would say. And the one, when we do this across many nationalities, many cultures, because that's what we do very differently. We do 25, 30 nationalities every single year through the 100 investments. Being able to read people with that cultural backgrounds ain't that simple. I think that's one of the things that I think we can proudly say, this we do well. Other things, but this we do well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you have the cultural differences, but then you also have like the role differences where a business person is completely different than a tech person in many different ways. I think that's quite interesting.
You cannot read passion the same way in an Spaniard, in a Dutch, in an Estonian, right? It's not you will never see that in an Estonian in your life. It's like these poker players, right? The Patrickers call it the poker players, right? So you need to go a bit deeper. You need to be able not to judge, but to ask questions to get to the answers that you want to find. Not prejudge quickly. This is in your own mentality, in your own way. I think because we had the background in so many different things, I think we are a bit less biased, because we're all biased, on judging people not to be like us, not to be like our previous examples, our previous investments, but to be what they are and try to find out how they are.
Yeah. Yeah, so to conclude, like the biggest focus is going to be the team. So you're basically talking to anybody, testing everybody with in-depth questions, look at the different roles, different responsibilities. Is there a vision? Is there an ambition to become big? Like even how do they know, or do they know how to get to 100x bigger? And then in the end, coming back to the book, is there a purpose? Why are they actually doing this? Is there an inner why?
Yeah, I would say that's what summarized.
Maybe go towards a bit of StartupwiseGuys. And I might be wrong here if I say this, but often a lot of accelerator programs are focused on getting funding, right? Do you think that's changing now in 2024 and beyond? Because the world is changing there.
I think one of the things that when people ask me what are the recipes to have a successful accelerator, because you've seen in the last 2-3 years, every day, one more dies, is we need to invest ourselves. So don't think an accelerator can be successful if in itself is not a VC fund, right? Because you cannot advise something you are not doing, right? You cannot talk to people if you're not putting your own money. So I think one of the differences is that and I have seen this not just 2024, but the last 2 years, is like we are mingling everybody into the pre-seed, right? So an accelerator is much as a pre-seed, as a business angel, was an early stage fund, right? And it's these combos that work together. And I think you need to recognize that, and you need to recognize that you're almost, I will say, I don't like the option as lead investor, but you are the one who is leading, putting these things together, right? So you're bringing in angel investors, or you're bringing yourself and another fund, but they come because you cannot in a way put all these things together, right? And I think that's the difference on the maybe 5, 6, 7 that we globally establish. That when we come in, we say, okay, if those guys are in, if otherwise guys are in, I'm putting my money also. So I think it's this putting things together. And I think the second change, and which is partially, or the first one is also that we are not investing for 6 months. We need to make sure that people is going to have 18 months to get to the next level, because the market has changed. Maybe in 2025, 26, the thing will go back to what it was in 21, maybe, or maybe continues slowly up as it's doing right now. But I think you cannot invest in something that in 6 months is going to die. So if that means you need to bring more money from other investors, if you need to say we need to reduce our expenditure, etc. But companies need more time to raise these days, right? So I think our biggest job is, apart from putting all these things together, is also helping companies to describe a path to profitability, which is something nobody talked before, right? And doesn't mean that you need to be profitable with 10K, but companies need to know, hey, with 40,000 euros monthly recurrent, I can be profitable. Good, let's work on that plan. Hey, if in the middle that traction gives you more money and you keep on going, great. But if it doesn't, you're profitable, you take your time, you have earned your freedom, you get successful to keep going, right? So I think that is a fundamental discussion. And I always amazed about, I don't think people understood break-even. I think 90% of the founders did not understood break-even, did not understood cash management. And now it's a fundamental, that's how everything starts, right?
Yeah. And you look back to the entire beginning of the conversation where I asked, what is success? And you said it's freedom. And this is what you're mentioning here as well. If you become profitable, you earn your freedom in a way that you don't need to go down the path. Like you can choose to accelerate growth, as you mentioned, but there's no real need, right? Because at least you have your freedom, what you can decide how you want to grow the company.
You can do it at the right time, right? So if the market is down and the demands are there are outrageous, then you don't do it. Then you wait. And I think I've seen basically, I would say 50% of our pre-seed to seed rounds that we have seen in the portfolio have been bridge rounds towards profitability. How much money you need to become break-even. Some of them has been $500,000 MRR, so there has been 150. But I think that understanding and working towards that is fundamental. And then what are the levers that if you have more, then you apply. If not, keep going. And it's also teaching you about that's okay. Because I think there is too much ego about getting the next round. That is not the objective. I don't know, people have gotten this business confused. The objective of this business is not the PR or the LinkedIn post on your next round. Your objective is actually profitability, is impact, it's 100 million AIR. That is the objective, right? And then that's how you transform the industry that on the first place you wanted to get into, right? It's not telling your mom, look at me in the press, I got a round, right? Because the next day after the round, you just give away another 10-15% of your company. That's the only thing that has happened, really, right? And I think that is a healthy change. I think that is something that even if it's hard to go through this time for many of the founders, and we feel it, and I feel it, I think it is a good change. I think it is going to help us create better companies in the future, or invest in better companies in the future.
Yeah, better and profitable companies. I fully agree here. We're going to switch over to the final 4 questions. So when we talk about the unsexy truth about startup success, what kind of advice would you give a founder who's just starting out and growing to 10K monthly recurring revenue?
Hire well. So really put a lot of effort in hiring. Test quickly as many things as you need, but with focus. So don't test 4 things at a time. So test one thing quickly, works or doesn't work next, right? So until you're 10, 15K, 20K, the errors, the mistakes are very cheap. So you are in a moment in which you can test a lot of things. So do not set into what is working right away. try to find and testing as many things as possible. I think that is a fundamental thing. And the third one I would say is ask your customers why are they buying your product. Stop making assumptions why they're buying it and ask them. And I think it's funny because most corporates don't talk to the customer. They're too big to do market research. And I think startups are different because they are built by talking to customers. And I think you need to make sure that you're not losing that early on. There is so many tools right now you can actually get way more content, but keep asking your customers, why are you buying us? I think that's a fundamental piece of advice that needs to be done in that one.
Yeah. So high, and as you mentioned before, based on value, test quickly, errors are cheap, and talk to customers like why are they actually buying from you.
Mm-hmm.
If we go past the 10K monthly recurring revenue and we're going to make a big jump, what kind of advice would you give founders who are now growing towards 10 million ARR?
One of the biggest surprises when people ask me in this business, what is my biggest surprise? It's always been that whatever was working doesn't work anymore. So when you go to pre-to-seed, to seed to Series A, the way you have grown doesn't mean that's the way you want to grow, right? So I think the biggest piece of advice to CEO is do not think this is a cookie cutter recipe, right? So really measure everything you are doing, because most likely the way you're going to grow to the next stage, to 10 million, then to the 100 million, is going to be very different to the way you grow until now. And the only way to do that is to measure. And I think when you're at that level, you have enough metrics and numbers, and you need to measure it. I think we're very intuitive on the first stages, and it makes sense because there is not that much data, even if you still have opportunities. I think we need to go into measuring much more, having that data to make decisions. And then I would say two things at the same time is, one is keep listening to the customers, find ways to keep listening to customers. You think you're 10 million, you're big. The corporate is making 150, 200 million, right? So your difference is, can you keep talking to the customer and be more agile as they are, right? And to me, is that don't start being afraid of making mistakes, because now the mistakes have become more expensive. But you cannot be afraid to make mistakes, right? And keep maintaining the culture of the company as much as you can. It's going to be very difficult. 50, 100, 200 people, 300 people, those are different type of animals. But I think if you make those places still special to work at. So you have to grow, that's your focus, but keep building a great company, no matter what. And I think that is going to make a difference, because best talent is, at the end of the day, is still the best recipe to keep growing.
Yeah. Like it. I guess to summarize, things will break. It's not going to be a written recipe. Measure, use data to make decisions, keep talking to your customers, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, even though they are going to be more expensive than in the early stages. And we're just going to zoom out, and the listeners are SaaS founders. Like, any general advice which you can give towards other SaaS founders who are now on their journey, wherever they are?
Yeah, I think we talk about the 1 million and the 10 million AIR, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are the golden measures, and you need to understand them. You need to understand how you're going to get to the first one and then to the second one, right? I would say always, you need to have a plan to get to the first. You have to have a vision to get to the second. And to me, that is fundamental. The second one is you need to understand why are you different. I think there is too many people just doing something way in their brain is very different, but the reality is not, right? So differentiation, how you build differentiation, how do you explain differentiation? To me, something that is SaaS these days, because again, SaaS, you put a website, you put a credit card, and you can start and you build an MVP. Here we go. So everybody can do it also, not just you, right? So how did you build differentiation? How do you maintain differentiation? So I think in SaaS businesses at that level. And then don't be obsessed, but not too obsessed about MRR. So there's so many people who is building revenues. Say, but it's not subscription based. Except they say, hey, it's good. We need to get there. But if you're making money, you're making money, right? So in a way, don't make it the holy grail of everything has to be subscription. Just because the VC asks you, oh, we need to see the subscription. And in a way, build your company for customers, not for investors. This is one of our best sayings in StartupwiseGuys, right? If they don't need subscription, they're doing just a different way of payments, but it's still product-based company. Good. Listen to your customers. Keep building the company. Keep getting them. Keep getting data. keep making the proposition more different. So I think have a plan to 1 million, have a vision to 10 million, build a company for your customers, not for your investors. I think that are fundamentals way to get there.
Yeah, good summary. Then the final question, and this is more of a personal question. What is one thing you wish you knew 10 years ago?
I don't think I wanted that to knew, but let's put it right. I think I knew it, and I think it's about the execution of it. And it's about, I was reading the book from the Phil Knight about the Zoo Dog, right? And it's talking about how in year 7, 8, the guy's still making 100 million, 50 million, and how he can go bankrupt next day, right? Anyway, still, right? And he still goes and buys a big house because he has 2 kids. And that's what life calls for, right? And to me, I knew it, and I know it, but it is a very difficult journey, right? So I think you need to enjoy the journey. It needs to, because it's never going to be easy. Even when you grow, even when you make many investments, even when we're lacking the society with our family, our kids, etc. But it's going to be a hard journey in any element of growth. So it's enjoying the journey and it's doing it with people that you like. The thing that makes the difference for you to keep going. Right? And I think I knew it. Sometimes we forget about it. It's never going to be easy because the growth will come with the next element of pressure. And the way we are, the way I am, so you're never going to be satisfied. That's my nature. You all want to want more, right? So that's fine. Just live with it. Accept it. Move on. Keep doing it, right? As long as you're enjoying it, it's fine. So you're never going to be satisfied, unlucky. But if you are enjoying it, keep going it is still fine because you're going to enjoy the next and the next and the next, right? And take care of yourself. I think a fundamental piece of advice, and maybe I knew it, but again, I know it better now, is you need to take care of yourself, of your health, of your habits. That is, nobody knows your body as you do. And you can try to fake your body, but at the same time, body will come and hunt you. So we have one body, so you need to take care of it, right? And I think that's a fundamental piece that I knew it, but I know it better right now. And I will remind myself if I go back, say, hey, I remember this.
Yeah. And I won't say this comes with age, but I do think it has something to do with it, where the older you get, you're going to listen more towards yourself and take care of yourself a lot better than early on.
Yeah.
Nice. This is probably going to be the most easy question. If people want to get in contact with you, how can they do? What's the best way?
Yeah, allow me there, Joran, a more anecdote. People say, this guy is full of himself, el patron, blah, blah, blah. No, my name is Cristobal. But I don't know, for years, I always fascinated how people can write Cristobal in so many different ways. So I never got the email. So now it's elpatron@startupwiseguys.com. And I don't even need to spell it. Everyone say, okay, good, go. So maybe StartupwiseGuys, if you are not English speaker, it might give them a bit of a problem, right? But so to me, it's just send me an email. All start in that sense. I'm very active on WhatsApp and then LinkedIn. I do pride myself that I respond every LinkedIn message to me that is not selling me websites to be made, but personal message for people. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, but I do answer every email and I do answer every LinkedIn request. Right? So I think those are the 2 easiest methods to catch up with me.
Nice. Fun fact, when I sent out the invite for the recording, I did have 2 emails on there, elpatron@startupwiseguys.com, and then the email from Cristobal. He does have 2, so you can try both, but El Patron, you probably indeed know how to spell it, so reach out to Cristobal like that. What we're going to do is we're going to link back to the book, and depending on when this goes live, we're going to link back to the second book and the third book. We're at least going to add them in as soon as they're live. We're going to add a link to your LinkedIn profile. So if people don't know how to spell Cristobal, they can just click the link. And then for people listening, make sure that you fill out the poll, which we're going to launch right now, and then review the podcast to make sure that we can grow this podcast even further. That's it. Thank you for coming on, El Patron, aka Cristobal.
Thanks, Joran. It's been a pleasure and actually fun, which is what it matters, right? Thanks.
Exactly. Enjoy the ride. Thank you for watching this show of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. You made it till the end, so I think we can assume you like this content. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, Feel free to reach out if you want to sponsor the show, if you have a specific guest in mind, if you have a specific topic you want us to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to take a look at it. If you want to know more about Reditus, feel free to reach out as well. But for now, have a great day and good luck growing your B2B SaaS.